Hi, everybody. I'm here with the host of the Humanist Report, Mike Figueredo. Did I say it correctly?
You nailed it. Thank you, Jimmy.
Fantastic. And I'm a big fan of his show. I'm sure if you watch this show, you've seen his show. And what I like about his show is that he's actually educated, well-read, and an academic, whereas I'm a bad student, spent my life in nightclubs, and I'm not as well-researched as I should be.
No, you're doing great, Jimmy. I think you're doing a service to progressives right now. You're communicating exactly what we all feel, and at the same time, you're making us laugh while doing it. So it's therapy. So you're fantastic.
Well, thank you for that compliment, Mike. You're very insightful into my show. You really have a lot of insights into how good we are.
I appreciate it.
So now we're very simpatico. We're just progressives, right? And we're realists. And what I like about considering, nobody likes labels, but we have to, how else are we going to speak about things if we don't use a certain amount of labels? So I label myself as a progressive and not a Democrat and not a liberal, because I've learned recently that the liberal class is not progressive. And so I just want to, what do you feel overall about the progressives in the Democratic Party, or what the progressives' future is with the Democratic Party?
Yeah, I think we're kind of at a turning point right now. Either the Democratic Party is going to reform and become progressive, or they will die and a new party is going to take their place. Now, what that's going to look like, I have no idea, because, we live in a two-party system. So are we stuck with two parties? Well, most likely that's going to be the case, but we're not always going to be stuck with the same two parties. And so with the extent to which Democrats have been wiped out at all levels of government, they either embrace progressive reform or people are going to leave the party. And we've already seen millions of people leave the party after it was revealed that they basically rigged the primary against Bernie Sanders in favor of Hillary Clinton. And I think that we're going to continue to see this trend. And lately, I've seen something that, even though we're in a really toxic political climate, people have awoken politically. You see progressives at town halls putting pressure on Senator Dianne Feinstein. I just covered a video where people were talking about Denny Heck. He is a congressman from Washington, and he didn't want to support single payer. So all around the country, progressives are saying, look, this is an ultimatum. Either you support things that are non-negotiable for progressives, single payer healthcare, or we go elsewhere. And yeah, I understand that the Republican Party, they're horrible. We all know that the Republican Party is horrible, but unless we have a viable alternative, well, that serves, voting Republicans out of office does nothing. And what the Dems want to do right now is just wait it out. They can be as shitty as they want, and they know that we all hate Donald Trump. He's a loathsome dude. But if they think right now that, if we just continue to stay the same, just be marginally less shitty than Republicans, then all we got to do is wait until people are tired of Trump, and then they'll vote us back into office. We have to change nothing. Those days are long gone. We're done. It's time they change. So that's basically what I think. They have to become more progressive, or they're going to die off.
Yeah, but you and the progressives are the ones who's responsible for Trump. If you would have just voted for Hillary, don't you feel a little bit ashamed?
Right. That was something that I had a couple of people reach out to me for after the election. They said, well, Mike, how do you feel now that you helped hand Donald Trump the election because you voted for Jill Stein? And my response was, well, I can sleep at night, because no matter if I voted for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, regardless, we would have gotten more warmongering policies. We would have gotten more of the same. And for me, I'm a humanist. Obviously, the name of the show is called The Humanist Report. What
does that mean, by the way, when you say you're a humanist? What does that mean?
So I think that human compassion transcends all political labels. My goal is to elevate humanity, human beings. I don't care if you're in the United States or you are in, a third world country. We're all human beings with the same desires. And I think that if we think about human empathy and what humans want, just to be happy, we're not asking for all of us to have mansions. We just want to be able to support our families and eat and have clean drinking water. That's how we should govern. We should look at policy from a humanistic perspective and think, if I'm a human being and I like these certain things to survive, the basic necessities, then we should legislate in that same way. So that's what Humanist Report,
okay,
means to me anyways.
So you don't feel ashamed. You don't feel like it's your, because the way I felt about voting for Jill Stein was the exact same way you felt about voting for her, was that thank God she was there to give me the opportunity to cast my vote for someone who wasn't a warmonger, for someone who wasn't in bed with Wall Street, and for someone who wasn't in bed with the fossil fuel industry. There was no way to vote against Goldman Sachs. There was no way to vote against more war, and there was no way to vote against fracking. And so I needed a way to vote against that stuff. And don't you think it's weird that Hillary Clinton made so many colossal miscalculations, not only not going to Wisconsin and not going to Michigan when she should have, but not picking a progressive as a vice president to make sure the progressives who wanted to vote against Donald Trump but couldn't bring themselves to vote for her, if she would have gave them any bit of a bone, but instead she picked someone to the right of her, which just went to show that all our fears were coming true and that we couldn't support this corporatist warmonger. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. She gave us no reason to be even slightly hopeful, right? Because rule number one in politics, don't shun your own base. You have to look at the base. Bernie supporters, they made up 45-50% of the Democratic Party's constituency. You don't spit in their eye. You don't brazenly rig a primary and then do everything to shun them and pretend like you have them. Voters are smart, right? That's debatable to some people, but voters are rational, I should say. They're looking out for themselves. So if they feel as though a politician is offering them nothing, they're not going to come out and support that politician if that shitty politician is better than their opponent. They come out to support a politician that is going to give them something, something that they can hold, more money in their pockets, a policy that will facilitate healthcare for everyone. That's not the way that voting works. And this is what the Democratic Party, this was their fatal mistake. They thought that, Donald Trump will be the ultimate political mobilizer. I forget who said it on the Bill Maher show. They said, Democrats are going to come out in droves to vote for Hillary Clinton because Donald Trump is just so crazy. He's so loathsome. They're never going to let him win. And if you've taken political science 101, you know that voters do not vote against a candidate; they vote for a candidate. That's not the way that it works. Voting is a chore. You have to come out. You have to educate yourself about who you're voting for. You have to wait in line in most states. So they're not going to come out and vote for someone who they think is going to screw them maybe a little bit less than the other person. That's not the way it works. So Hillary Clinton ran a campaign completely bereft of strategy. She made every rookie mistake when she had the weight of the establishment, corporate media behind her, when she had millions of dollars paid to Democratic Party consultants. She made rookie mistakes. So they did everything wrong in this election, and they have nobody to blame but themselves. And forgive me, if they want to blame me for handing the election to Trump because I voted for someone who inspired me, then so be it. But I voted for Jill Stein because I deserve to have a candidate that's going to represent my interests. Now, regardless if people, the main contention with Jill was that, she's never going to win. Right. But the point is that I'm voting for Jill Stein, one, because I believe in her and she inspires me, and two, because I'm sending a message to the Democratic Party. You will not get my vote no matter what. I don't care how crazy the Republican candidate is. You have to offer us something. So that's what it comes down to. And so I don't regret voting for Jill Stein, and I do it again because Jill Stein is a phenomenal candidate.
So what about Neil Gorsuch? You don't. I mean, somebody's going to wag their finger at you. So I mean, that's great. You live in a fantasy world of fairies and fairy dust, and you get to vote for a Green Party candidate. And meanwhile, we get Donald Trump and the Supreme Court, Neil Gorsuch. So that's your fault, right? What do you say to that?
Here's the thing about that. That was the one argument that a lot of people, I think it resonated with progressives who didn't want to vote for Hillary Clinton, but they thought, this is a vote for the Supreme Court, right? And I am completely sympathetic to that argument, even though Merrick Garland, we don't even know what his stance was on most issues. He was a centrist at best. He was a candidate that was a huge gift to the Republican Party. So I can see that argument. I can sympathize with voters. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that the weight of the Supreme Court should be on voters. You never blame voters for the incompetence of politicians. This is really the first time that I think I've seen this happen in the United States. If the politician sucks, you blame that politician. You don't blame the voters. If the Supreme Court is going to go and flip to a conservative, or a larger conservative majority potentially, then you better damn well make sure you're not putting up a flawed candidate who, by the way, during the primary, she was being investigated by the FBI. I mean, they rolled the dice with Hillary Clinton when she was rejected once, and now they're blaming us for their mistakes. And I just completely reject it unequivocally. If you care about the Supreme Court, the Democratic Party cares, or they purport to care, then don't put up a candidate who's historically disliked. It's very simple. I mean, I can't believe that we're even having this discussion about who's to blame. Well, of course you blame Hillary Clinton. She ran a terrible campaign. If you can't see that, then you're biased, my friend.
Yeah, but isn't it your duty? I mean, we live in a binary choice. You only have two choices. And if you're moral, Chomsky said that if you have any sense of morality whatsoever, you vote for the lesser evil, which would, I guess, in his mind, I don't know. He seemed to think the lesser evil would be the candidate who would not start World War III. And then he seemed to contradict himself by saying you have to vote for Hillary Clinton, even though she's the candidate most likely to start World War III. So that was really weird. Did you notice that with Chomsky, that he contradicted himself 100% on that?
I love Noam Chomsky, but yeah, I wasn't with him on the lesser of two evils argument. And I'll admit that prior to this election, I was kind of on board with that argument. I think it's a rational voting strategy. Voting for the lesser of two evils, it is a strategy, regardless if you agree or disagree with it. But it wasn't a strategy that I wanted to employ. I thought that, during this election cycle as a voter, my strategy was to send a gigantic message to the Democratic Party that the way that they're doing business is unsustainable. They're getting to a point where the parties are so close. I mean, look at the Syrian issue. Hillary Clinton, throughout the course of her campaign, was talking about doing the same thing that Donald Trump just recently did, but even worse, because she wanted a Syrian no-fly zone, which means that if Russia violates that Syrian no-fly zone, we shoot down their planes, and then we're starting World War III. Now, when she was asked about that during a debate, she said, I don't think it's going to come to that. Yeah, but do you really want to roll the dice with World War III? Because I think I'm going to be a little bit hypersensitive to anything that could catalyze a world war because I'm a rational human being. How many people are going to die because of our carelessness, because, we didn't take extra precautions? So, I mean, when you look at that, some people said to me that they don't even think Hillary Clinton was the lesser of two evils just because of that one policy. I don't, for me.
I agree with those people, by the way. I agree. If you think the most important thing is avoiding World War III, which I think it is, it was a toss-up between them. In fact, Donald Trump, his whole campaign was he wanted to take us out of these foreign interventions. And now it seems like the establishment media and the deep state and even the lefty media, the MSNBC, they're banging that drum for war louder than anybody. Rachel Maddow is claiming that hacking John Podesta's computer was an act of war by Russia, and then she wants us, I guess, to go to war with them. So the left has completely lost their mind on this. So, I would not agree with them 100%. If it depends on what you think the lesser of two evil means. If you think the lesser of two evil is keeping us out of World War III, Hillary Clinton was not your candidate.
Mm-hmm. And see, I don't know. I think that probably it was the case. I think you and I probably disagree a little bit here. I think that Hillary was the lesser of two evils, but at the same time, the lesser evil was still very, very evil. So if I voted for the lesser of two, who I thought was the lesser of two evils, then I felt as though, I'd have blood on my hands. So anything that Hillary Clinton did, I was complicit. I gave her permission by casting my vote for her. So if she intervenes in other countries, if she starts World War III, that's on my conscience, and I wasn't going to have any part of that. And you make a great point about the media. Think about how egregious this is. The so-called left-wing MSNBC, they've set up this false dichotomy so that way, if you are for intervention, you're the good guy, you're the humanitarian. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, if you're against intervention, then you're the bad person. You're against human beings. But meanwhile, that same media who's trying to get us into war with Syria, how much coverage, Jimmy, have you seen personally about the slaughter of Muslims in Myanmar? I haven't heard anything about, if we care about humanitarian issues, I can pinpoint dozens of humanitarian issues that they're not paying attention to. And really, if you go, if you perform a quantitative analysis and look at every single country in the world and see how many dictators that are just objectively bad people are running those countries, I think we'd have to invade a majority of them. The point is that humanitarian wars, that's not a thing. That's propaganda. The media outlets that claim that there's a such thing as a humanitarian war, it's bullshit. And they're trying to drum up support for another war. When the United States intervenes for humanitarian reasons, you are not a humanitarian. You're killing more people. War facilitates death and destruction. That's literally what happens. So if you intervene and you bomb Assad because he's killing civilians, well, inevitably we're going to kill civilians as well. They like to call it collateral damage. I call it civilian deaths, because these are innocent bystanders that died because our government and their government happen to disagree about something. So it's completely unfair. So if you're a humanitarian, then you should never be on the side of war ever. With the exception of maybe some circumstances, but I don't know what case by case basis. It's difficult to judge.
So you don't understand, Mike. What you're not understanding is that when we don't drop evil bombs on people. We drop Christian humanitarian bombs, and when they explode, they dodge, they miss the kids, and they miss the children and the women, and then they go up to a soldier and they hug him to death. That's what our bombs do.
That's what we think they do. If you watch the media, that's exactly what they do, Jimmy.
That's not what they do. Well, I have to look more into this. I'm going to watch Rachel Maddow tonight and find out if that's exactly what we do. So how disappointed are you in Rachel Maddow?
Let me just say this. Growing up, when I kind of started to really get into politics, when I started college, she was like one of the few people in the mainstream media that I felt like I could trust. And, anyone in the mainstream, right. Because anyone in the mainstream media, you knew that you had to be skeptical because they're owned by large multinational corporations that buys off our politicians. So in return, what you get is the narrative that the government wants by proxy of large multinational corporations. So Rachel Maddow, however, she demonstrated that she was a pretty objective person. She was critical of Democrats, when she needed to be. And she was on the right side of multiple issues. But I think throughout the course of the Democratic primaries in 2016 and, partially in 2015, she, like a lot of other people, kind of showed their true colors, that they're not really that objective. They appear to be objective. And maybe she just changed. Maybe she was objective in the past, but they just care about the Democratic Party. It's about Democratic Party loyalism. So because I disagree with Democrats on issues X, Y, and Z, it seems like they're being objective, but really they're not. Because if we're now talking about Donald Trump de-escalating between the U.S. and Russia and pulling troops from the NATO border, which is a policy, or pulling NATO troops from the Russian border, which is a policy that Obama had. I mean, Donald Trump doesn't want to arm Ukrainian rebels. That's also the policy that Obama had. Now they're condemning Donald Trump for doing some policies that Obama implemented. So you can tell it's not about objectivity. It's just about promoting what the Democratic Party wants them to promote. And right now, that is attack Trump. Be anti-Trump. It's not about the real issues. It's not about what's happening in the country. It's not about Flint, Michigan, or Myanmar. It's about the corporate agenda that the Democratic Party's donors wants to push. That's all it's about. So, you kind of have this coming to Jesus moment, if you will, where you realize, holy shit, everyone in the media, there's no allies in the mainstream media. There's no allies. We have no one.
None.
So, yeah, and I was thinking about this with the whole demonetization issue, how you and your show and my show, they're demonetizing our videos. Isn't it kind of convenient that, one of my viewers sent out a little screenshot of YouTube promoting Syrian news from CBS News, from the Associated Press? Meanwhile, we're getting demonetized every single time we talk about it. Doesn't it feel as though they're trying to silence independent media? I mean, could you imagine if we went away and there was just mainstream media? What would you do?
Wow.
It's scary.
I guess I didn't, I hadn't really ever thought about it because I knew I wasn't going to go away. I knew the Young Turks weren't going to go away no matter what they tried to do financially to us. Mm-hmm. And, people will call you Alex Jones if you talk like this, right? Has that happened to you yet?
I don't know that I've been called Alex Jones. Actually, yeah, you're right. I have been called Alex Jones. I think one time, but mostly as of late, I've been called a Russian shill. And I've had one of my supporters anyways recently said, hey, Mike, I recently became a Patreon and I love your show, but I told my family about your videos and they were really skeptical. They said, how can we prove that this guy isn't a Kremlin shill and isn't working for Vladimir Putin? And, my thought was, well, you could tell your family, I'm completely flattered that they think I'm that important. A dude, who makes videos in his house with a big mouth would get the attention of world leaders. I'm flattered, but if I'm a Kremlin shill, then I'm waiting for my check, Vladimir. So I would like to get that because I haven't heard anything about it. But it's ridiculous right now. If you go against the grain, you're a conspiracy theorist. And I don't know how many times progressives have to be proven right. We were saying that the Democratic primary was rigged because it was. I mean, they tailor-made rules that benefited Hillary Clinton to the disadvantage of all of her opponents. That's called rigging. If the competition is inherently unfair, that's called rigging. They called us conspiracy theorists. And then we had the WikiLeaks dump, and then we saw, oh, look at that, there's evidence now. And if there wasn't evidence, like they claim, Debbie Wasserman Schultz wouldn't have stepped down. So we're not conspiratorial. We've been right. We've been validated. But, the problem is we're going against the agenda of large corporations and the Democratic establishment. So, of course, we're going to be smeared. But you know what? We're going to take it. And I don't care if I'm smeared. If I'm continuing to be objective, then I'm doing my job.
I care that I get smeared, but it does not stop me. I do care. I do care.
I think that's probably more accurate. Yeah, because it does hurt a little bit, admittedly.
It does bother me. It doesn't bother, 9 times out of 10, I just go consider the source, and that makes me feel good. Most criticism, that idea that there's no such thing as bad press is true, and Trump proves that. And so anybody wants to criticize me, you're helping me in a bigger way than you think.